All right. Oh boy. Well, I could see you. Okay. Okay. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal-mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man ittaba hudahu ila yawmiddin thumma amma ba'du. Okay. So last time, inshallah ta'ala, because we're going to begin with talking about Aqeedah, the belief system of the Muslims. And we spoke about the different types of Islamic monotheism, right? The different parts that play a part in the whole or the totality of Islamic monotheism, or what is known as Tawheed. We talked about lordship and worship and how lordship, or someone who possesses lordship, the oneness of Allah when it comes to recognizing and acknowledging that He is Lord, He is the creator, He is the sustainer. Understanding and knowing that does not necessitate that an individual also has with them the actualization of ilahiyah, which is the worship part. So someone can believe those things, yet they worship other than Allah Jalla fi'ula. So continuing from that, we're going to speak about, and we're, a lot of times it might seem like we're beating a dead horse because some of the topics, they seem very close together. But remember, brothers and sisters, that this issue that we're talking about, the issue of belief, is something that we really have to reiterate, and we have to stress, and we have to go through those detailed matters, because this is what determines whether one is inside the fold of Islam or outside the fold of Islam. So now the topic that the issue or the topic we're gonna discuss is the relationship or the connection between these two types of Tawheed, and that if one has become corrupted, then the other is also corrupted, which is something that we pretty much stated last class. But last class, we only looked at it from the aspect of the person who has actualized the aspect of lordship without worship. So I'm just going to read here what the Sheikh has written. So it says, ما ذكرناه من أن عباد الأوثان مقرون لله بالربوبية وشاهدون بتفرد الله بذلك وأنهم إنما أشركوا بالله في الإلهية حيث عبدوا معه غيره فهذا في الظاهر. So it says on the outlook, on the surface, he said that we've mentioned how the worshipers of idols, the polytheists, they acknowledge that Allah is Lord, right? Which means that they understand that he's the creator, the sustainer, and all these things that lordship entails. And they bear witness to singling him out with that. But they only associate partners with him when it comes to worship, where they would worship other than him. But that's on the surface. On the surface, that's how it looks like, that they have separated these two different aspects of Tawheed. It says, إِلَّا فَأَنْوَعُ التَّوْحِيدِ مُتَلَازِمَةً فَمَنْ صَرَّفَ عبادة كالدعاء لوثن من الأوثان وطلب منه أن يختار له ما فيه مصلحته يسافر أو لا يسافر يفعل هذا الأمر أو لا يفعل هل يضره ذلك الشيء أو لا يضر إلى آخره مما كان يفعله المشركون وينتظرون فيه الجواب من الآلهة المدعوات المدعات فمن فعل ذلك فقد نسب للوثن القدرة وعلم الغيب وما لا يقدر عليه إلا الله. Okay, so the Sheikh, he says here that the different aspects of Tawheed are associated, they're coupled, they're together, right? You can't take one away from the other. They're combined, I guess you can say, as well. There's a relationship between them that cannot be separated. So he goes on to say that, so whoever takes a worship, an act of worship, such as supplication, calling on Allah or calling on somebody for help, right? So you take away an act of worship such as supplication and you give it to an idol, and you seek from this idol, that this idol should choose the best outcome for you or the best situation for you out of what you are asking. For example, should I travel or not? Should I do this thing or not? Will this thing affect me or harm me or not? And so forth. And these are the things that the mushrikun, the idolaters, would do. These are the things that they would do. And they would wait for a reply from their idols. They would wait for a reply from their idols. So whoever has done something like this, and he has attributed to the idols, then he has basically said that these idols, they have some type of ability. They're able to do those things. And that they know the unseen. And these are things that no one knows and no one is able to do except Allah Jalla fi'ula. وَذَلِكَ مِنْ خَصَائِصُ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ. And these are from those things that are specific to the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لذا فشركهم هذا في العبادة يتضمن شركا في الربوبية. And that is the reason why them associating partners with Allah when it comes to worship it also affects the lordship. Because like we said, knowing the unseen, having the ability to answer their prayers and their requests, those are things that are part of lordship. Right? And that is the reason why there's that talazum, there is that connection, that relationship between those two matters. Sheikh goes on to say, وَهَذَا الْأَمْرُ ظَاهِرْ كَذَلِكَ فِي عُبَادِ الْقُبُورِ. He said this is the same situation that we have when we talk about worshipers of the graves. People who worship graves, they fall into the same situation, they fall into the same scenario. There is no difference. حيث يطلبون من معبوداتهم, because the people who worship grave, they seek from those individuals in the grave that they worship أمورا لا يقدر عليها إلا الله. They seek from them issues or things that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do. So there's no difference between someone who worships an individual in a grave and someone who worships a idol or an idol. So, and this is where the issue comes in. If there's no difference, then we have to address the subject of some of the Muslims who worship graves. Of course, they don't consider it worshiping of graves, right? Because they're saying that, no, but that's because what? They're not able to distinguish between the different types of worship, or they're not able to, how do you say? They have distinguished between the other types of worship and the prayer. Because to them, prayer, meaning the 5 dailies, is what should only be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why it's important for us to really understand Islamic monotheism and why it's different. That's the Tawheed, why it's different from the other instances or claims of Islamic monotheism. It's very important to understand what worship is. And worship is doing something for the person that you worship. If that person that you worship commands you to do a thing or commands you to not do a thing, you doing that thing is worship, or not doing it is worship. If you feel that doing that thing pleases the entity or whatever you want to say that you worship, then that is part of worship. You doing that thing is part of worship. So when Allah tells us to do certain things or tells us not to do certain things, then we understand from him saying that these things are for us to do and he likes these things, and these things are for us not to do and he dislikes these things, that those things, us doing them or not doing them, are a part of worship. So worship is not just prayer. Worship is not just prayer. It's not just the 5 dailies. And we're going to stop right there. Any questions as far as that's concerned? Assalamu alaikum, Ameen. Ahlan. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, let's move on to the next thing that we're going to cover, bidnillahi ta'ala, which is, of course, Arba'un an-Nawawiyya. And we're at the 35th Hadith. The 35th Hadith. And the 35th Hadith عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تحاسدوا ولا تناجشوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا ولا يبيع بعضكم على بيع بعض وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا لا يظلم المسلم أخو المسلم المسلم أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يخذله ولا يكذبه ولا يحقره التقوى ها هنا ويشير إلى صدره 3 مرات بحسب امرئ من الشر أن يحقر أخاه المسلم كل المسلم على المسلم حرام دمه وماله وعرضه رواه Muslim. So this hadith is recorded by Imam Muslim. Excuse me, Bismillah. He said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not envy one another and do not seek to do nudge. Nudge is when somebody wants to buy something from you, but you don't want to sell it. So you raise the price so astronomically that you'll get rich if they were to buy it, or they would not be incentivized to buying it. So you're not supposed to do that to one another. وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا, do not hate or spread hate amongst one another. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, and do not turn your backs from one another. And do not undercut one another. And undercutting, what we're talking about here is, of course, you see somebody selling something for a certain price, and you go to the person that they're selling to and say, hey, I could sell you that for cheaper. So that's undercutting. Kunu ibadallahi ikhwana. Be servants of Allah as brothers. Al-Muslim akhul Muslim. Muslims are brothers of Muslims. We are brothers. A Muslim is the brother of another Muslim. So do not oppress him. Do not humiliate him. Do not lie to him. And do not belittle him. Now, taqwa, having the fear of Allah Jalla fil Ula, is right here. Ha huna wa yashiru ila sadrihi 3 marat. The Prophet ﷺ pointed to his chest 3 times, showing you where taqwa is, the fear of Allah. Where is it? Then he said, it's sufficient thing that is evil for one to do, that he should belittle his fellow brother Muslim. Belittling your brother Muslim is sufficient thing as evil that you can do. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, everything is impermissible or is sacred from one Muslim to another. Everything is sacred from one Muslim to another. And the things that are sacred is blood, or in other words, his life, his wealth, and his reputation or honor. However you want to say that. His reputation or his honor. So that's the hadith. So what are some of the benefits that we get from this hadith? It's impermissible to envy your brother. And what we mean by envy is to desire what that person has over you, and to have that blessing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them be taken away from them. Whether you want that blessing to be yours or not. Some scholars say to be yours or not. If you don't want it to be yours or not, no problem. But you want the blessing that they have to go away. You don't want them to have what they have. That's envy. Then, of course, we explained the other thing that's impermissible to do, which is to hike the price of an item because you don't want to sell it, hoping to get rich off of something, or somebody, I guess, enticing you to sell something you really didn't want to sell and raising the price of it. So you can't do that. And you cannot spread enmity among one another, hate among one another. You cannot spread hate among one another. And you cannot turn your backs on one another. It is impermissible for us as Muslims to turn our backs, desert our fellow Muslim. Rather, we should be together as brothers and sisters. Be together as brothers and sisters. And then the Prophet ﷺ reiterated that to show the importance, not just the importance, but the obligation of having Islamic brotherhood, right? Being in a brotherhood. This is what we are. And the ties of Iman, of faith that binds us, is the strongest tie and relation that one can have. Okay. So being brothers, meaning that we should love one another, and have affection towards one another. Love and affection. Love and affection. We should want good for one another. And we should want to repel harm from each other as well. Also, we understand from this hadith that it is impermissible. It is not allowed for us to oppress our brother. It's not allowed for us to humiliate, belittle, or lie to, or lie about. And this hadith has shown us the severe, I wouldn't say disdain, but the severity, yes, the severity of belittling your fellow Muslim brother. The severity of belittling your fellow Muslim brother. And that it's enough as a form of evil. It is enough as a form of evil for someone to do that. Okay. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ also in this hadith has indicated to us where taqwa can be found. And that taqwa is in the heart, which shows that there is more to this organ, the heart, than what has been said by the physicians and the scientists and so forth and stuff like that. The heart, its only job is to pump blood throughout the body and things like that. No, the heart that we have is actually connected to other things. It thinks, feels, And it is a place of taqwa, is where the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And that's pretty much it for this hadith. There was something, so with all of these things that are impermissible, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this hadith, what do you guys think? How do you guys think this would apply to a marital situation now? How do you guys think this would apply to a marital situation? What I mean by that is, there are some people who are married that have no problem oppressing their spouse, no problem belittling their spouse, no problem humiliating their spouse, no problem abandoning their spouse. I mean, what connection is more stronger than that of brotherhood due to Islam plus a connection due to marriage, other than blood, right? Because if you have blood and you have Islam, that is the strongest connection that you can have. But after that is blood and marriage. I'm sorry, Islam and marriage. Yet we see that there are people who are married that when it comes to the prohibition that are mentioned in this hadith, that they don't have any problem with violating all of those prohibitions. And we can make excuses, right? Like, oh, well, that was said in anger, or, the person was upset. But we have to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that even when we are upset, that we don't transgress certain bounds. Some of you guys might be looking like, well, I don't know too many people that will go to this extent. I mean, any no brothers and stuff like that will go to this extent. There are brothers out there that would. There are brothers out there that definitely would. But more so than the brothers, a lot of sisters, they fall into this almost like habitually. Like, it's just part of the way that things work. Right? Oh, we got into an argument. Let me start belittling you, oppressing you, everything. It's like a checklist. This hadith is like a checklist to them. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And this is the reason why I wanted to bring this up. I mean, we really have to remind ourselves and remind our sisters too as well, that, we are going against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when we get into that. And I know that because of, I understand from a certain standpoint that because of the strong connection that you have with your partner, this is what brings out those feelings. And women are creatures of feelings that make it hard to control when certain issues come up and arise. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and them to do what he is pleased with. Ameen. Okay, so with that, are there any questions as far as the hadith is concerned? Okay, I mean, there's another thing we forgot to talk about the last part of the hadith, where it's impermissible, of course, to how do you say this? To of course violate someone when it comes to their life, their property, and their reputation. Right? You can't violate them in those three aspects. That's also impermissible. So when it comes to money, if you borrow money, give it back. Right? That's part of where the violation comes in. And other things too, robbing And remember, when we talk about money or wealth in general, wealth is a lot of different things. Crashing into his car and acting as if, you know what I'm saying, it was always like that, or somebody, you know, while he was in the masjid, it wasn't you that did it. Somebody else, you know, sideswiped him and drove off or something like that. It wasn't you. That has happened. Not to me per se. Not in that specific, but something similar to that. So there are things like that do happen. And brothers, they try to cover it up. And subhanAllah, ya ikhwan, the best thing that you can do is tell the truth. And you just don't know how Allah, I mean, in a situation like that, you're probably thinking, oh man, I don't got the money to pay the brother, and what am I gonna do, and stuff like that. And sometimes the brother doesn't even care. He cares more about you being truthful to him, and he cares about the damage to his car. Because now he knows who he can mess with, who he can bring close to him as a companion, as somebody he can rely upon. Then, you know what I'm saying, getting a couple extra bucks for fixing a dent in a car and stuff like that. Now, what do you think is more valuable? Knowing who you can rely on, knowing who you can depend on, or having a car that doesn't have a dent in it? It's hard sometimes to find good sahib, good companions. It's hard. And that's a test that someone might be tested with and they just failed. All because they were worried about money more than they were about their friendship with the brother. Kunu ibadallahi ikhwana. Be servants of Allah as brothers together. That's your brother. And you just violated him. Reputation. Now this one is a very sticky subject. You cannot, brothers and sisters, violate someone's reputation. And if we were in amongst the Muslims in a Muslim country, they can take you to court for that. I mean, here you can kind of take somebody to court for that too, messing with their reputation. It's harder to prove that though if you're just an individual. But if you're part of a company or something like that, or your face is the company, you're more likely to be able to sue or take someone to court because of that. So yes, from anything from, you know, the brother being off it or whatever phrase you want to use to, you know, committing fornication, we have to be very careful. And those things will be messing with someone's reputation. And we're going to have to answer to that in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so with that being said, are there any questions? Or can we continue on to the next subject? Tafadal. I don't understand the question. Say it again, please. Hold on, Akhi. Who's that talking out there? No. I'm sorry, Akhi. We have some background noise. So repeat again for me, please. Yeah. Exactly. No. No, you brought up a good point. I mean, when it comes to disrespect, I mean, we're gonna have disagreement with our partners and stuff like that, or our wives and things like that. We're gonna have disagreement. There's gonna be arguing and stuff like that. But when you think about when a woman makes the excuse that, you know, they are emotional and things like that, the question has to be asked: would they say the same stuff that they said to you? Would they say that to their father, their son? You know, the same way they got at you and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Would they do the same thing to the other men in their lives, or their children in their life? Would they say the same thing to their son if their son ever got them heated like that? You know, would they say that stuff to their father? No. So I find it interesting that they're able to control themselves with certain people, right? It seems. But yet, you know, when it comes to their husband, which, you know, there should be the same amount of respect, admiration, and all of those things for, it seems like, you know, it just doesn't, there's a thing there. So Allah musta'an. But yeah, this is something, like we said, this is something that we have to continue to, and it's partly our fault, because when was the last time we bring these issues up to sisters and make them be cognizant of this reality so that they can check themselves? How many times do we do that? We have to be the reminder as well. I mean, who else is reminding them if not us? You know, so just keep that in mind, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Tafaddal. Naam. Why would that not be your brotherhood and blood, for example? No, you're right. Exactly. I mean, if we put everything, and that's what I said, I don't know if I made that clear, but if we put everything in order, as far as, you know, what has the strongest connection, I thought I kind of explained this, but it would be, of course, relation through blood and Islam, right? And then, of course, relation through marriage and Islam, and then relation through Islam, which is the brotherhood, right? It will be in that order. So yes, there is a stronger connection between you and your wife than there is between a brother that you know, there's no connection with other than the Islamic faith. And that's why I said, because of that stronger connection, then these rules, these prohibition that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned here, they apply more so in a scenario like that. Okay, so with that being said, let's continue on now. I'm sorry, Tafaddal? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Say that again. I said I may have misinterpreted it the wrong way, but I understand what you said. Okay, alhamdulillah. I'm glad that things are clear. No, alhamdulillah. Yeah, but that's what I was trying to say, though, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to cover, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is Arjuzatul Mi'iyya, which is, you know, the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu wa sallamu alayhi. And I know that the brother Mukhtar, he does seerah too, and we do it in a different way and stuff like that. I mean, I cover little snippets. You know, I don't go into nothing deep, you know, and everything like that. And it's very, very precise. So last class, we covered the issue of the Prophet ﷺ arriving in Medina and building dwellings for his two wives. Who are they? Who are the two wives that the Prophet ﷺ built dwelling for? Who remembers?
Soda.
And yeah. So the Prophet ﷺ built dwelling for Soda and Aisha, but we have to remember too that I stated that this wasn't done at the same time, right? It was one after the other. Some time went by and then the other was built, and he built houses for the additional wives as needed. So after that,
I have a question about that.
Tafaddal.
As far as well, their houses, because from my understanding, his house was right outside the masjid.
Mm-hmm.
So were their houses like next to each other?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were like.
Yeah, boom, 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 like that.
Okay.
He was, the brother was asking about whether or not the houses that the Prophet ﷺ built for his wife, were they next to each other? And the answer to that is yes, they were next to each other. Okay. So after that, the Prophet ﷺ, and I think we mentioned this too as well, about the people that were in Habasha, the companions that were in Habasha. Some of them returned or they made hijrah from Habasha to Medina, and they were like basically half the number of that went to Medina. So some of them, they stayed in Habasha, they stayed in Ethiopia, what's now modern day Ethiopia. So we're gonna go now to where the Prophet ﷺ did something. Okay, so let's paint this scenario, because I want you guys to answer or tell me what happened after this, right? So we have a situation where the Prophet ﷺ is now in Medina. He is setting up camp, building a community. He has called the people who are not in Medina to come to Medina. What do you think was one of the biggest events that happened after that? We have people coming into Medina from the companions, radiyallahu anhum. What's the next step? What happened?
Where are they gonna live?
Okay, it's something that has to do with that. It's something that has to do with that. You're close. What famous thing happened? And it actually kind of connected to the hadith that we talked about. The hadith that we just covered in 40 hadith, there's some connection there, I think.
Did he make bonds of brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajir?
Exactly. The bonds of brotherhood was what happened next, right? Because you have these people migrating. Let's think of it. It's the same thing that happens in our modern day times, right? You have immigrants coming in with just what they have with them. They don't have any connection to the place that they're going to. No housing, no way of making prosperity. So the Prophet ﷺ, his solution for that was almost like a housing project. He made those immigrants from the companions, radiyallahu anhum, brothers to the people that live there. Now, initially, the brotherhood, what form do you think it took? Was it just in name alone? No, they were considered brothers, almost as if they were brothers by blood, to the point where one would inherit from the other. One would inherit from the other. And some of the companions, the Ansar are the companions that are from Medina. They're not the immigrants, they're the locals, right? The locals from amongst the companions would give half of everything that they had to the immigrants, the muhajirun. And this is something that is known as a virtue of the Ansar. This is one of their virtue. Allah has blessed them and raised them in ranks because of that situation that they were in, and because of giving them the ability to earn all of that blessing. And they helped out those immigrants, the muhajirun from Mecca, the companions that were from Mecca and from Habasha and so forth. So that was something that was really big in Islam that happened, and it was almost like a social work that the Prophet ﷺ did there that worked out good. The immigrants, they were able to settle. They had somebody who was looking after them, making sure that they were all right. Their newfound brother, and they were able to build a livelihood for themselves. So that is something that happened. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. I mean, like I said, we only cover little bits of the Seerah. Right there, nothing too heavy. Okay. I wonder if we should do. Let's knock the thing about the adhan first out before we get to issues dealing with marriage. All right, so we spoke a little bit about the iqama, and I think we covered the whether or not it was obligatory or not. And what did we say about that? There's two opinions, right? Some scholars say it's obligatory. Some scholars say that it is not obligatory. And in there lies the problem or the issue of whether or not you need to say the adhan all the time or when you want to pray and so forth. Okay. Now, the issue here is after covering the adhan, the issue that we're going to cover here has to do with the iqama. And how is the iqama said? And what is the difference between the iqama and the adhan? Okay, so some scholars say that there's no difference between the iqama and the adhan except for the iqama is said more, in a more rapid pace. It's faster than the adhan. While some scholars, they say that the adhan and the iqama, the difference between them is the fact that the iqama, you don't say everything twice, you only say it once. So Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, hayya al-salah, hayya al-falah, qad qamat as-salah, qad qamat as-salah. Qad qamat, this is also something that's added into the iqama that is not in the adhan, and that's said twice. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, la ilaha illallah. So that's the iqama. What does the word iqama mean? The word iqama is inside of the iqama when we say qad qamat as-salat. So qad qamat as-salat, what does that mean? Qad qamat as-salat. What does that mean? The qamat, which is where the word iqama comes from. This is a linguistic test. It's not really something too deep, but let's see who's on their P's and Q's when it comes to that. No.
I have a guess, but I'm not sure.
Then that's why we're here. We're here for the guesses. Guess.
Come pray.
What do you say?
Come pray.
Come pray. Close. It almost sounds like the word come too, right? Come. Yeah.
Come makes a lot.
Yeah, come makes a lot, right? Let's go. No, okay. So what the word really qamat means is that to establish. So basically, but it's in the past tense. So it's saying that the prayer has been established. The prayer has been established. So the qamat is salat, meaning that, hey guys, the prayer is established. Let's go. Basically, is what it's saying. So that's what the iqama means, to establish. Okay. And that's all we're covering here. Like we said, just taking a little bit from that. Bidnillahi ta'ala.
So do you have to call the iqama before you pray?
Yes.
Like if you're at home?
Yes, you should call the iqama in any instance and stuff like that. You should call the iqama. Okay. So now we're going to be talking about the subject matter of marriage. And we kind of touched on the fact that marriage can be, or the 5 rulings can apply to marriage. What do I mean by that? The 5 rulings can apply to marriage. Anyone knows? The 5 rulings. There's something known as the 5 rulings in Islam. What are they?
You got to be sane.
No, that's conditions.
Oh, okay.
Rulings, 5 rulings. When we talk about when we talk about a specific issue in Islam, usually there are 5 rulings that an issue can fall into. Right? It's either one of those 5 things. So what are those 5 things that are rulings that can apply to certain issues in Islam?
What do you mean by rulings?
That the ruling of something, like for example, what's the ruling of prayer?
But it has to be defined by Allah and His Messenger, wouldn't it?
Well, that's how we know what the ruling is from Allah and His Messenger. But what are they, though?
Oh, I don't know. I know it's simple.
Oh yeah, it's simple. It's simple. Okay, let me try and give you guys an example. Let's take any issue. I want you guys to give me an example. Name me an issue in Islam. Any issue the first thing that comes to your mind.
People leaving Islam for dunya purposes.
Leaving Islam? Okay. All right, leaving Islam. There's a ruling to that. What is it? Can you leave Islam?
Not without a consequence.
Which mean, and if there's a consequence, which means then the ruling of leaving Islam is what?
It's death.
Death is the punishment. But what is the ruling?
What is the ruling?
It's impermissible. It's haram.
Oh, yeah, right.
You can't leave.
Right.
It's haram. Right? So haram, something being haram is a ruling.
So is it you're saying more like category like makruh?
Yeah.
Or mustahab?
Yeah.
Mandub?
Those are all rulings.
Okay.
That anything can fall into one of those categories, right?
Yeah.
That we do.
So
Like
there's halal,
there's halal,
haram,
haram,
mustahab,
mustahab,
makruh,
makruh, yeah,
and mandub.
and mandub. Yes.
What is mandu and mustahab?
Mustahab. Okay, so all right, some of these they have like different names, right? The halal and haram normally they don't have different names, except for the word. I'm sorry, not halal and haram. We talking about wajib and haram, right? Wajib. Some people might say it's fard. You ever heard the word fard? Well, fard and wajib they pretty much interchangeable. They mean pretty much the same thing. They mean something that you have to do. Haram, something that you can't do. Right? If fornication, haram, can't do it. Marriage could be wajib, right? You have to do it. All right, so then there is something called mandub, or it's called mustahab. Mustahab and mandub means the same thing. Which is something that it's not wajib, it's a little bit level below that. Because remember, wajib, you have to do it. So mandub and mustahab is something that's encouraged for you to do, like your sunnahs, for example, right? And then after that we have mubah.
That's right.
Mubah is not something that's encouraged, nor is it something that's discouraged. Like eating in itself, like specific food or something like that, is mubah. You can eat. You don't have to worry about whether it's halal or haram. You eat.
It's
Right.
like something that's not opinionated.
Yeah, basically, there's no opinion on it either way, basically, right? And then you have makruh, which is disliked. So it's not haram, but it's better that you stay away from it. You won't get punished if you do it, though.
Right.
But it's better to stay away from it.
I heard you get a blessing.
You get a blessing you get rewarded for staying away from it, but you don't get punished if you do it. The opposite of that is mustahab or mandub, where you get rewarded for doing it, but you don't get punished for not doing it. That's the highly encouraged actions.
So like making sunnah.
Yeah, like making your sunnahs, right? You get rewarded for doing it, but you don't get punished if you don't do it.
So if makruh means something that's bad but not haram.
Yeah.
So why
More like disliked.
Yeah, like just something that's like in the middle. Is that kind of?
No, in the middle will be mubah. Like we talk about, like there's no ruling on it. It's like, neither here or there. That's mubah. But makruh is like, let me give an example. What would be disliked?
Laziness.
Well, I heard at one time they labeled smoking cigarettes makruh.
Yeah.
Haram now.
Yeah, it's haram now. Yeah. Yeah, that would be, well, back then that would be a good example and stuff. Okay, like eating onions specifically, like raw onions or garlic. The reason why they say that it's disliked because the ruling is if you come to the masjid and you smell like onions, they can kick you out. In fact, you're supposed to kick because the smell that's on your breath can disturb the people that are praying. And what the Prophet ﷺ say that the angels are affected by the same thing that we are affected by. So just like how we don't like those smells, the angels don't like those smells. So you're basically, that person is coming in to the masjid with that bad smell, and he's repelling the people that are praying and the angels. So because of that, if that happens, you can expel them from the masjid. So that a person eating raw onions and stuff like that is makruh, right? It is something that's disliked. It's not haram. You could do it, but it's disliked because of, what can happen if you do that. You might not be able to pray in the masjid and stuff like that. Okay. All right. And then we have, of course, haram, which we know is his haram. Even non-Muslims now know that word and stuff. SubhanAllah. Which is, inshallah, Allah will, make his religion be victorious, even if those who dislike it. Okay. So when it comes to marriage, the scholars say that marriage falls under all 5 rulings, meaning that sometimes it could be wajib, sometimes it could be mustahab, which is highly liked, sometimes it could be mubah, which is, neither here or there, it's whatever. If you do it, it's good. If you don't do it, it's no problem, basically.
So it could be haram too?
Yeah, we're going to get to that, inshallah. And then it could be disliked in certain instances, and it could be haram in certain instances. So what we're going to talk about and cover today is, when is it wajib? Okay? And it's I want to ask you guys, when do you think getting married becomes obligatory?
When you're old.
Actually, most people will say that's probably the time when it's not obligatory. When you're old.
When it becomes more challenging for you to keep your chastity.
Yes, pretty much. That's pretty much what all of the scholars, they pretty much articulated with the same kind of concept. If you fear that you're going to commit fornication, it's obligatory for you to get married. And this goes too for women too. Some of the scholars have stated that, even for women too. Now some of them, they have some conditions, or some conditions you could say. For example, if a person is able to get a hold of a slave woman, that they can do that instead if they're not able to afford marriage. You still have to be able to afford marriage, right? Just because you're about to fornicate doesn't mean that, I'm about to fornicate, I don't got no money, get married. No, you got to have something to take care of a family, right? Of course. You can't. There's no way you can get a slave woman in America, right? Yeah, I mentioned a slave woman because they mentioned a slave woman, right? The scholars of the past mentioned a slave woman, but there's no way you can do that now, and especially not in America. But when is it? Is slavery something that's totally gone out of Islam? Is there no way? We're just done with slavery? Is that a thing? What do you say? It's a sensitive topic, yes. What do you say, Aqeedah? Oh, you're quiet on the issue. It is a sensitive issue, but listen. MashaAllah.
Can I ask the question?
Go ahead. No, let me ask this question, then I'll answer the question.
So why is slavery a thing in Islam at all?
Okay, because slavery was a thing in the world. That's like asking, why did people, buy and sell? Why did people trade? It was part of what people did. Now, nowadays, people still buy and sell, but they don't do trade or barter like they used to back in the days. Slavery was a part of almost every society back in the past and stuff. Whether it was in Africa, whether it was in Europe, whether it was in the Americas back then, everybody would make slaves out of a conquered people. And that's the reason why some scholars, they say, in fact, the majority of scholars say that if there was war, the people that we subjugate in war, we can use them as slaves. And I think in Afghanistan, they did that. Like, the old Afghanistan war, like when they were fighting Russia, they would capture the Russians and they would use them to, for landmine finding and stuff like that. They would say, hey, go out there and let's see what happens. You know what a landmine is and stuff, right? Yeah. And I mean, this is what I heard from my Russian classmates and stuff like that. That's what they were doing, right? So that's something that And so the thing is, okay, why is it that you make slave out of the people that you fight, you defeat in combat? Islamically, when we do it and stuff like that, it's, of course, so that they can be subjugated under Islam. But the only way that a Muslim is going to fight someone else is usually because they're stopping them from propagating Islam. That's when we're talking about, jihad al-talab. We're talking about the jihad where we actually go out and spread the word of Islam. Jihad al-daf'a is different, where we actually defend our homeland and things like that. It's a little bit different, right? But back in the days and stuff like that, one of the reasons why, when we do go out and try to spread the word, and someone try to hinder us, try to stop us from spreading the words of Allah, we fight them so we could gain access to do that, to do what we were commanded to do, which is spreading the word of Allah. And because of them trying to stop the word of Allah from spreading, we subjugate them, make them underneath our rule. But of course, that's with strict guidelines and things like that, but the argument could be made, right? A slave is a slave no matter how lofty those guidelines are. Like, we know that in Islam, your slave has to wear the same clothes that you wear. They have to eat what you eat. You know what I'm saying? And they can buy their freedom. And if they become Muslim, you're encouraged to set them free, or at least allow them to buy their freedom. These are things that, that Islam has set in a way where a lot of scholars believe that because of those guidelines that were set in Islam, that Islam did its best to do away with that practice, right? Because it encouraged the freeing of slaves, encouraged, the treatment of them into a way where someone would say, well, if I gotta feed this guy the same food that I eat and clothe him with the same, I'm not making any money. That's expensive. So why keep a slave under those, circumstances and things like that? So now that's encouraging, the breaking down and the disbanding of that whole institution. So there's a point to that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay. Inshallah. Okay, so basically we know when marriage becomes obligatory, and I don't think there's anything here that we need to touch on in regards to that. I think there was a side issue that I wanted to cover, but I'm not finding it. I mean, they mentioned something about swearing to marry and stuff like that, but that's not something that we need to really touch on. And yeah, I guess that's it. So are there any questions as far as that's concerned, the issue of when marriage becomes obligatory? I think it's pretty much straightforward. So what we can understand from that any situation other than basically feeling that you're going to commit sin, marriage does not become obligatory, right? Other than you fearing that you're going to commit sin if you don't get married, marriage is not obligatory. And the sin that has to be, that you're fearing that you're going to fall into, is fornication. So, for example, the heart is weak. Some people, because they're not married, they become a little bit loose with certain things, right? And they do, like for example, some people might, I don't know, watch porn or something like that. They might I don't know, talk to the ladies in chat rooms or whatever. I don't know what they have now. Instagram. They don't even have chat rooms anymore. That's so old. Oh my God. But like Instagram or whatever it is that they have, right? They'll talk to the ladies and stuff like that. Have a lot of female friends that, these things are to kind of distract them from the fact that they're not married. And these things are not permissible, because next thing you know, that these women or girls or whatever that they're talking to on these social media sites and things like that, next thing you know, they're exchanging pics. And those pics are, showing, the awra and things like that. The private parts. And I'm talking about private part in the broader sense. We know that might happen too as well. But those things are someone falling into haram. But we notice that the scholars did not say any type of haram that you fall into. They specifically say the issue of fornication. So something like that, what an individual should try to do is use the other means that are available to them that should try to minimize the effects of those actions and deeds, like fasting, and things like that, making sure that you busy yourself with dhikr and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so forth. Got a question? Okay. Okay, so that's it. We're done with class. Are there any questions? If not, we can stop right there. Bidhnillahi ta'ala.
You might want to wait a second. So if you went through Layla's thing.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah, that's what the phone is on.
Oh, okay.
Wa iyyakum.
We have some questions here.
Yeah, tafaddal. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, the sister here, she's in one of the groups. She says that she's often told by many brothers that she needs to get married, and it is half her deed. She says she doesn't want to get married, but they're telling her that it's haram for her to not be married because it's half of her deed. She said, why are they telling her this? Then she doesn't have to get married. What does this mean? Half my deed.
Okay, so that's a good question. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. We're going to be here for a minute.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear that.
Okay, so remember when we covered those 5 things that marriage can fall on, right? It could be obligatory. Marriage could be obligatory. It could be encouraged, which is, mandub or mustahab. It could be either or, just in the middle, no real, ruling for it in regards to the person. Of course, this is for the individual, right? Or it could be disliked, or it could be haram. That hadith that states that marriage is half of your deen, or shatr is what is used, the word shatr, which is translated as half, but it could mean a part of, a huge part of, anything like that. It just means, something from something. Not necessarily a half, but normally it's translated as that. That hadith shows that it is encouraged, highly encouraged for an individual to marry in general, right? If there are nothing that puts it in the other categories and stuff like that, and there's nothing that makes it obligatory. So yes, you should get married, but it is not on the level of compulsion as obligation. It is highly encouraged. And the reason for that are plenty, right? We have the ayah that we mentioned before, and so for the فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Marry that which pleases you from among the women. Right? That is a command from Allah to get married. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talk about tazawwaju. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said tazawwaju, meaning he encouraged to get married. Inni mukathiru bikum. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to make his ummah be plentiful. And he also said, marry the woman that's wadud walud. Marry the woman that is affectionate and childbearing, that she could have a lot of children. So for the reason of procreation and having a large ummah. All these things are encouraging marriage, but not to the level of obligation. But it's still something that every Muslim should think about, because it is in line with the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. So if you have no valid reason to stay single, you should be thinking about marriage. I mean, is it just an issue of you following your desires? I don't feel like it, or what is it? You have to. That's a question that you have to ask yourself. Because if you don't have any valid reason to get married, you should. Now, other than the benefits that we've spoken about already, there are certain things that marriage, or there's only certain things that you can extract from marriage and gain from marriage that you can't gain anywhere else. And one of the things is sabr, patience. Dealing with another individual that is now part of your life, day in and day out, takes a huge amount of patience. And patience is one of the virtues that is highly praised in this religion of ours. And what better way for you to extract it from yourself other than marriage? Also, in marriage, there are more opportunities for you to gain reward. A man, when he's married, gain rewards by doing the obligation that is upon him of feeding, clothing, being nice to his wife. While a woman gains reward that she would not have get any other place than at the feet of her husband. Being there for him, being in compliance to him, making sure that he's good so that he can do what he needs to do for the family. She's rewarded for all of this. So by not marrying, you're missing out on all of these opportunities for reward. Naam, la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa ma wus'aha. Laha ma kasabat wa 'alayha ma iktasabat. Naam, that's true. But then again, this goes back to the question is, why are you not marrying? Do you have a legit reason? Is it something that is holding you back, that is legitimate, that is a valid reason, or not? And if not so, then you should get married. If you have a dislike for intimacy, maybe that might be a reason not to get married. But if you're just following your desires, like, I don't feel like dealing with somebody else, that's not a valid reason not to get married, because you don't feel like dealing with nobody else. I like my lifestyle. I like being able to do what I want when I want. Like that type of attitude, that right there, that doesn't cut it as a valid reason to not get married. Now, you still could not get married. If that is your reason, you could still not get married, but you're missing out upon following the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the reward that comes with that. You're going against the natural way of things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do and encouraged us to do. But on the tongue of this Prophet Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. You have to keep that in mind. And that's that. Any other questions?
She said her reason for not marrying is she just doesn't want to deal with that drama anymore.
See, that's not a good reason.
She had a bad experience. It sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, we all have bad experiences. I mean, life is full of bad experiences and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I mean, first of all, let's ask ourselves this. You know, what one of the things when you have a situation like that, you got to ask yourself, what role did I play in that situation being the way it ending up the way it did? And we all play a role. It takes two to tango, as they say. Right? No one put a gun to your head and say, "Hey, marry me." Right? I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. There's no shotgun weddings going on here. So, what role did you play in that situation ending up the way it did? Once you can recognize that, and you could be honest with yourself in regards to that and have some sense of accountability, then you know what to avoid on your part. And you could also then look at, okay, these individuals that I married before, or whatever the case may be, what were their issues? How can I avoid people like them the next go around? I mean, this is how we should handle situations. We don't just tuck our head in the sand and don't deal with it. No.
Does the person have to live with you?
Is that another question?
Yeah, I mean, because what I'm saying, I'm trying to find, you know, if
لحظة يا أخي.
if a sister had a bad experience, maybe, and maybe the person lived with her for a minute, do they have to live together in order for her to? I'm just trying to find a middle ground where maybe they don't have to live together immediately, and then it could be whatever it's going to be. So is that
Okay? So a brother brought an interesting scenario here for your situation to maybe kind of ease your worries. Can you marry someone but like not live together with them so you can find out exactly who they are, just in case, you know, things might go south and things like that? I mean, this is something that can be done. I don't advise it fully. And the reason for that is because you really don't know anyone until you live with them. So y'all could spend 2 years apart, different houses, you know, and talking on the phone. You might discover something. You might not. You know, so, and how many people, I mean, let's look at the world today, right? How many people, girlfriend and boyfriend, 5 years, 10 years, and they've been girlfriend and boyfriend longer than they've been married. Right? They've been married 2 years after the 2, and then they divorce. But they've been girlfriend and boyfriend, you know, seriously dedicated to each other for 10, 15 years before that. No, I don't mean amongst the Muslims. I don't mean amongst the Muslims. I'm just talking about in general. I'm just talking about as an example to show that knowing someone without being in a marital situation 100% does not mean. I'm sorry, say that again. I can't hear anything you're saying. Oh, okay. All right. What does she mean by find a man?
somebody compatible? She compatible.
Yeah, we all know how that goes. Go ahead.
That most of the men in her community are not righteous. She's not going to settle for anything.
There you go, settle in. Okay, first of all, I don't believe that most of the men in her community are not righteous. I don't believe that at all. I mean, where's she? I mean, is this like Sin City, or where she live at? Where the most of the men in her community aren't righteous. Now, we have to understand that humans are humans, right? Nobody's perfect. We all gonna have a deficiency. She's saying that the majority of men are on crack, or they're like what, shooting each other in the streets. What are we talking? What makes them not righteous?
She said she lives in Philadelphia.
Oh boy. Okay, so
Some of them look in Ohio.
yeah, Ohio brothers, we kind of like, a little mellowed out over here and stuff. But we got our gems too, man. We got some brothers that be just like them brothers in Philly. Yeah, I mean, as her situation is a little bit different, yes. The brothers in Philly, mashallah, tabarakallah, there's some good brothers in Philly. It's like Philly is like, I remember when I went to Egypt, and I used to have a lot of complaints about Egypt, even though I really didn't interact with the people that much. But I feel like a lot of the Egyptians that I met, they were like racist and ignorant and things like that. Like when I'm speaking English to them and they ask me where I am and I tell them I'm American, they call me a liar and stuff like that. I'm like, what the heck? So it was but I understand that that's just because there lack of exposure and things like that. But I was young when I went to Egypt. I was like 21, 22. So I used to complain about the Egyptians to my friend who was there for a longer time. I think he was there like maybe 2 years before I came and stuff like that. And he used to live there. And then he told me a narration from Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, lived in Egypt. And the people would come to Imam Shafi'i and complain about Egypt. And he would agree with them. And some people would talk about the things that they love about Egypt, and he would agree with them. So he was questioning about that. Why is it that you say, you agree with this person that Egypt is bad, and you agree with this person that Egypt is good? I mean, what is it? So he said that Egypt is whatever you make of it. It's whatever you see or whatever you want to see, it's going to be, basically. So for the sister that is in Philly, whatever you want to see, that's what it's going to be. I understand that Philly has its issues. I understand very well. But I also know the brothers I went to school with, Mufti, brothers that I've met in Saudi Arabia, good brothers from Egypt, like, Ali Davis and Sajid and all these brothers that I've met. And some brothers that I met, in Egypt too, that were from Philly and stuff like that. Actually, no, I didn't meet any good brothers from Philly in Egypt, but there were brothers from Philly in Egypt. So I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, there are good brothers there. And if there are no good brothers in Philly, try to look outside of Philly. If you cannot find any that meets your criteria or anything like that, try to look outside of Philly. Jersey is a little bit more, the brothers there are a little bit more mellowed out. New York, the brothers there are a little bit more mellowed out. And it's close enough where, you might not, it might not be a problem moving there or the brother moving to Philly or whatever the case may be. Or just look anywhere else in America or outside of America. Of course, with each place, there's going to be a little give and take. You know what I'm saying? If you look outside of America, brothers are not everybody outside of America has the money that you're used to. I mean, people in America don't have the money that you're probably used to, with the economy and everything like that. Most sisters aren't cool with that type of situation, and that's okay. Just understand that means that that your options are going to be limited, but still you could look inside of America, bidnillahi ta'ala, for a situation that would be suitable for you. And make sure that you have a wakil or wali that is very sociable. A brother that knows brothers, and so forth. So that way you get the best chance of being mentioned when the time comes. Don't have a wakil like me or somebody else that, don't associate with nobody, or something like that, what I'm saying, that don't know, like, barely knows like 2-5 people and stuff like that. You don't want a situation like that. That's my advice to you. Any other questions?
One sister here says it's hard to remarry when you
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. That is going to be a problem. I mean, I don't know. I can't really, sugarcoat that for you. Um, it's different if your kids were older to the point where they're like basically like outside the house, and they're on their own for the most part. Because no matter what the scenario is, they become more of a liability to any, and I'm sorry to say this, to any brother that's looking for a perspective, marriage. That just means that's more that he has to deal with. And your sister and your kids could be angels or close to it. But there's not going to be a scenario where a brother's going to see that, that marrying you would be a better situation for him than marrying someone that doesn't have those issues to deal with and stuff, which is your children and things like that. And it is though that your kids are. I think part of the best thing for you to do is focus on your children and raising them the best way that you can, and don't make. I think if you focus too much on marriage right now, it might become disheartening for you. But you can, in your situation, do some good. And that is making sure that your kids have the best experience that they can and things like that until somebody that comes along who has the ability to handle your situation. Because like I said, a lot of brothers are remember when brothers look to get married, we look at things differently than you guys do. It's like an analysis in cost and damages and all these things. That's what we're looking at. We look at things like that, right? Very calculative, very black and white for the most part. And there's going to be a lot of responsibility that comes with a situation like yours. Even if you say that all the father, he's involved in their lives, you don't have to worry about anything. That sounds good on paper, but in reality, that's not how things normally work out and stuff. So, I mean, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you in your situation and continue to make dua and hope that something opens up for you in the future, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Any other questions?
One more sister said, on with this marriage. She said one more question. She said, what do you recommend a woman who wants to get married and just can't? What do you recommend that we do?
What do you mean by just can't? Why can't you? Is this the same sister with the children?
No, this is a different one. One with the sister, the kids said her kids are grown now. But the other sister here, I think she's typing.
Okay.
Doesn't know, she just can't find a husband. They just, no one wants to marry her.
Do you have like some type of health issue? Missing an arm, leg, or something like that?
She said no.
Are you considered attractive? What? I mean, men look for women that are attractive. I mean,
I know this sister personally. She's very attractive. She's been looking for a husband for the past 20 years.
okay, so let's take a okay, so when it comes to women saying other women are attractive, I find that a very interesting thing. But I notice that what men find attractive in women and what women find attractive in women, they don't always, line up. But let's just say that the sister is an attractive sister, and you said that for 20 years he hasn't been able to find anyone. Who's her wakil or wali?
Then her father
There's a problem. There's the problem right there. And why doesn't he though? I mean, what's his excuse, I guess you could say?
He hit it on the nose. You hit it on the nose, she knows why.
Maybe she don't feel comfortable saying it. She may not.
What, putting her dad out there?
Go out there.
I think she knows why. I've been telling her, she knows why.
Okay, I mean, so I can't really say much about the issue because I don't know the specifics of why he doesn't want to marry her off. But if his reasons are valid, I mean, you're gonna have to convince him or change. You know, if his reasons aren't valid, then you have to convince him, or at least say to him, Dad, can you at least relinquish your responsibility in this issue so somebody else can take the reins? You know, whether it is your brother, I think she said you have sons that are grown.
That's a different sister.
Oh. Okay, so if with all of her family Muslim, you have myriad of people that can take over or take charge if the father doesn't feel that, you know, that he's up to the task.
Well, hold on, Shay. If she was married before, does she don't need the permission of her father if she was married before, does she?
Yeah, she do. Yeah. You still have to, even in a situation of married before and stuff like that, he has to still give the thumbs up. And even with the Hanafis say that even a scenario like that where a woman can marry herself,
Yeah.
the family, meaning the father, can go to the courts and have the marriage dissolved if he doesn't feel that it was done in a way that is, you know, that is correct, meaning that he doesn't feel that she married somebody that's suitable to him, to her. All right, so yeah, so getting back to this issue now. So if you can convince your father to have somebody else handle that situation, that will probably be your best bet.
This is her question.
It's like a oppression.
Okay, I like her question. Her question now is this. Just because a person has a mental condition, does that mean that we don't deserve to be married ever?
It depends on what the it depends on what the mental condition is.
Bipolar.
Is it something that she has under control? Is it treatable? Because here's the thing now, a normal sister with nothing wrong with her mentally is difficult for our brother to handle. Marriage in itself is not something that is easy with just people that are just regular Joe Smos, as they say. And you see people that don't have these problems, a lot of them aren't even able to hold it together. So now you're putting in something, an additional issue onto the table. Your father might be looking at it as saying that he's trying to save you the heartache, right? Because you might get into that scenario, and as soon as you get in, or as quick as you get in, that's about as quick as you get out. And it's probably out of care and concern for you and your mental state and well-being, and not seeing you hop from one person to another. The reason why he's taking the stance that he is. Now, with that being said, I do agree with you that everybody deserves companionship if it's possible. Everybody deserves, you know, to be able to have from the zina of the hayat dunya, the beautifications of life, which is al-mal wal-banun, you know, having offsprings and wealth and a good life and things. These are from the zina, the beautification of this world, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made permissible for us to indulge in. But we have to look at our scenario and situation. Are you any different than a person who's dirt poor? A person who's dirt poor that can't even afford to support himself. Can that individual Is it okay for him to get married? No. But he might want to. He might want kids. He might want, the companionship and all that. But in his situation, he'll only be oppressing the other person. I don't know what your mental situation is 100%, because I know that they do have medicine for bipolarism, and you go to see a doctor and things like that. In certain instances, it is controllable. Is yours in a way in which it can be controlled? As long as you take your meds, as long as you have a support system, or is it even with those things in place, there is still going to be an issue that's problematic for somebody else to deal with? If that is the case, a very special individual has to come along who's able to deal with a scenario like that. And the thing is that you won't know who that person is until the time comes, right? I mean, some people can say, what do you do at a sit down? The guy's going to say, oh, yeah, no problem. I can handle that. I can deal with it. And then when it actually happens, he can't. Is that a chance you're willing to take? Is that a chance anybody should be willing to take? Him, your father? I think there's a discussion that needs to be had between you and your father. You guys need to really sit down and try to disseminate all aspects of this issue, and making sure that everyone has a good grasp of the benefits and the harm. Because anything that we do in Islam, we have to have a good grasp of the benefits and the harm. If the benefits, after you guys dissecting the issue, outweighs the harm, even by a little bit, Bismillah. It's probably best to take the chance. But if it doesn't, then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make your situation easy for you. Ameen. Any other questions?
That's the last one I had.
Okay, so with that then we say subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's really good, brother.